Imagine being asked to relocate to one of the most impoverished regions of Africa. Not for a year, not for 5 years, but for 2 full decades. How long could you endure the challenges? For most people, this scenario sounds almost unthinkable. Yet in Nigeria, one Chinese agricultural expert didn't just imagine it, he lived it. And his story is nothing short of extraordinary. This isn't a tale of migration or personal ambition. This is the story of Wang Xuemin, a man who arrived in West Africa as an agricultural technician and became something far more remarkable: a chief, a hero, and the architect of a food revolution that would change hundreds of thousands of lives. For 20 years, Wang worked shoulder to shoulder with Nigerian farmers, introducing what experts call super rice, high-yield varieties engineered to produce dramatically more food while consuming fewer resources. Through patient determination and scientific innovation, he helped approximately 800,000 people escape the devastating grip of hunger. His contributions earned him not just gratitude, but an honorary chieftaincy, one of the highest honors local communities can bestow. But how did a foreign agronomist become a traditional African chief? What technologies did he bring to Nigerian soil? And what does his journey tell us about the broader relationship between China and Africa in the 21st century? Today we're diving deep into this remarkable story, exploring not just one man's dedication, but the agricultural transformation of an entire nation. To understand Wang Xuemin's mission, we first need to examine the broader landscape of China-Africa relations, particularly in the agricultural sector. Over the past 6 decades, China has invested heavily in Africa's development. The numbers paint a striking picture. More than 900 economic and social development projects have been launched across the continent since the 1960s. These initiatives span multiple sectors, from building roads and railways to establishing schools and hospitals, fundamentally reshaping Africa's infrastructure and human capital. Beyond government-led projects, Beijing has actively encouraged Chinese enterprises to establish operations throughout Africa. These businesses have created economic and trade cooperation zones that generate employment opportunities for local populations while deepening the integration between Chinese and African industrial supply chains. By the closing months of 2023, China's direct investment in Africa had surpassed $52 billion, with over 3,000 Chinese companies operating on the continent. Among all these sectors, agriculture stands out as particularly significant. In our interconnected 21st century world, agricultural development has become a cornerstone of national progress and food security. And in this domain, China has achieved extraordinary success that few nations can match. Consider the scale. In 2023, China produced approximately 270 million tons of rice. The country's rice cultivation covered roughly 39 million hectares. That's over 20% of the world's total rice-growing area. These figures underscore China's dominant position in global agriculture and explain why African nations have looked eastward for agricultural expertise. Yet while China has mastered the science of feeding its 1.4 billion people, many African countries struggle with food insecurity. Outdated farming techniques, challenging climate conditions, and lack of agricultural investment mean that even basic nutrition remains elusive for millions. In Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, ensuring that citizens have enough to eat has been an ongoing challenge, one that would require outside help to overcome. Nigeria presents a fascinating contradiction. As Africa's most populous country, with over 200 million inhabitants, it possesses enormous human potential. Approximately 35% of Nigeria's workforce depends on agriculture for their livelihoods, making farming the nation's most important economic pillar. Yet despite agriculture's central role in the economy, prosperity has remained frustratingly out of reach for most Nigerians. The land is often difficult to cultivate, agricultural knowledge is limited, and modern farming techniques have been slow to arrive. The result is sobering. The majority of Nigerians survive below the poverty line, with food insecurity casting a long shadow over daily life. By 2004, the situation had become critical. Facing severe food shortages that threatened to destabilize entire regions, the Nigerian government recognized it needed external assistance. Officials turned to China, already an important partner in various development projects, seeking expertise that could help solve the nation's deepening hunger crisis. China's response was swift and practical. Rather than simply shipping food aid, which would have provided only temporary relief, Chinese authorities decided to send agricultural specialists who could teach sustainable farming methods. The goal was clear: help Nigerians grow more food themselves, creating long-term food security rather than short-term dependency. Among those selected for this crucial mission was Wang Xuemin, an experienced agricultural expert with deep knowledge of rice cultivation. Alongside 9 trainees, Wang would embark on a journey that would test his skills, patience, and determination in ways he could never have anticipated. When Wang Xuemin first stepped off the plane in Nigeria in 2004, he carried with him the hopes of both Chinese and Nigerian officials. His mission seemed straightforward enough: introduce local farmers to traditional Chinese agricultural tools and advanced rice-growing techniques that had proven successful across Asia. The team quickly identified an opportunity. On the outskirts of a Nigerian city, they discovered approximately 600 hectares of unused wasteland, land that had been abandoned or never properly cultivated. Wang envisioned transforming this barren expanse into a thriving rice farm that would serve as both a production facility and a demonstration center where Nigerian farmers could learn modern agricultural methods. But as anyone who has worked in international development knows, the gap between vision and reality can be enormous. Wang and his team were about to learn this lesson the hard way. Southern Nigeria's climate proved to be their first major obstacle. The region experiences what meteorologists classify as a savanna climate, characterized by distinct wet and dry seasons, with overall conditions remaining hot and humid throughout the year. While rain is abundant, its pattern and intensity create unique challenges for rice cultivation. The heat and moisture that might seem beneficial for growing rice instead created perfect conditions for something else: weeds. Aggressive, fast-growing weeds exploded across the fields, multiplying at an alarming rate. These weren't the manageable weeds farmers might encounter in more temperate climates. These were tenacious plants that could overwhelm crops in a matter of days. The young rice plants, already struggling to adapt to the local soil and climate conditions, found themselves in a desperate competition for resources. Weeds blocked sunlight, consumed nutrients, and strangled the rice before it could properly mature. Wang's team watched helplessly as their carefully planted fields transformed into tangled jungles of unwanted vegetation. The terrain added another layer of difficulty. The land was uneven and rocky, making it impossible to deploy large-scale weeding and farming equipment that would have been standard in Chinese or other modern agricultural operations. Without machinery, controlling the weed problem became a Herculean task that consumed enormous amounts of time and labor. The team had initially projected a harvest of 4,000 tons of rice from their 600-hectare farm. This figure was based on proven yields from similar projects in Asia and seemed achievable with proper management. When harvest time arrived, however, the actual result was devastating. Just 300 tons, less than 8% of their target. For Wang Xuemin and his colleagues, this failure was more than disappointing. It was shocking. They had brought expertise, seeds, and dedication, yet the Nigerian environment had defeated them. Some might have given up, requesting reassignment or declaring the mission impossible. But Wang understood something crucial. Behind the statistics and agricultural data were real people. Nigerian families who went to bed hungry, children whose growth was stunted by malnutrition, communities trapped in cycles of poverty driven by food insecurity. Giving up wasn't an option. If China couldn't help Nigeria succeed in agriculture, millions would continue to suffer. Wang resolved to try again, but this time with new strategies informed by their painful first lessons. Innovation through adversity, developing Gawal R1. After that disappointing initial harvest, Wang Xuemin and his team, well, they really entered a period of intense reflection and innovation. They realized that simply transplanting Asian rice varieties and techniques to African soil just wouldn't work. Nigeria needed customized solutions, rice varieties actually bred for local conditions, and farming methods adapted to the region's unique challenges. In 2008, Wang kicked off a comprehensive research and development program focused on creating new rice varieties. This wasn't quick work, not at all. Agricultural research demands patience, careful observation, and honestly, countless experiments. Seeds need to be crossbred, tested, refined, and tested again across multiple growing seasons before a viable variety emerges. Meanwhile, the weed problem still needed immediate attention. Wang made a practical decision that would have multiple benefits. He hired more than 80 workers from surrounding villages to manually weed the rice fields on a regular schedule. Now, this labor-intensive approach wasn't ideal from a modern agricultural perspective, but it solved two problems at once. The fields were kept manageable, and local families gained employment and income, improving their living standards while the research continued. Years passed. Seasons came and went. Wang and his team planted, observed, analyzed, and adjusted. They studied how different rice strains responded to Nigerian soil chemistry, rainfall patterns, temperature swings, and pest pressures. They experimented with planting densities, irrigation methods, and nutrient management. Slowly, bit by bit, they started to understand what would actually work in this challenging environment. The breakthrough finally came in 2017, nearly a decade after the research program began. Wang's team developed a new rice variety they named Gawal R1. This wasn't just a minor improvement over existing strains. It was a genuine agricultural innovation tailored specifically to Nigerian conditions. When tested across multiple locations in Nigeria, the results exceeded even the team's hopeful expectations. Gawal R1 delivered yields at least 30% higher than the rice varieties Nigerian farmers had been using. In some optimal conditions, the improvement was even more dramatic. But Wang didn't stop at development. He knew that for Gawal R1 to make a real impact, it needed official recognition and support. The team worked through Nigeria's agricultural bureaucracy to get the new variety properly registered and approved, a process that, as you might imagine, can be frustratingly slow in any country. Their persistence paid off when Gawal R1 became the first rice variety developed by a private institution to receive official registration in Nigeria. Even more significantly, the Nigerian government didn't just approve Gawal R1 for domestic use, they recommended it to other nations in the economic community of West African states. This endorsement marked a watershed moment. A rice variety developed specifically for West African conditions was now being promoted as a regional solution to food security challenges. For Wang Xuemin, this achievement represented vindication after years of setbacks and hard work. But more importantly, it meant that the technology to help millions escape hunger was finally ready for widespread deployment. The broadcasting and harrowing revolution, a technique for Africa. Developing a superior rice variety was only half the battle. Wang understood that even the best seeds would fail without planting techniques suited to Nigerian conditions and capabilities. Through continuous field experiments and adjustments, Wang and his team developed what they called the broadcasting and harrowing method, a planting approach specifically designed for the local climate, soil characteristics, and available equipment. Instead of forcing Nigerian farmers to adopt complex techniques requiring expensive machinery, this method worked within existing constraints while dramatically improving outcomes. The concept was elegantly simple, but scientifically sound. Seeds were broadcast across prepared fields, then harrowed in using basic equipment to ensure proper soil contact and coverage. This technique turned out to be remarkably well adapted to the Nigerian environment, significantly improving both the survival rate of rice seedlings and their eventual yields. When the first major harvest using both Gawal R1 seeds and the new planting method came in, the results were, honestly, just stunning. Golden waves of rice swayed across fields that had once produced meager crops or none at all. The yields were 5 to 6 times higher than what local varieties had produced, setting a new record for African rice production. These weren't just impressive numbers on paper. By 2018, Gawal R1 had increased Nigeria's total rice production by more than 2 million tons. At least 200,000 farmers directly benefited from the new technology, experiencing improved incomes and, most importantly, making sure their families had enough to eat. Scaling up, from demonstration farm to agricultural transformation. Success in one location proved that Wang's approach worked. Now, the challenge was scaling up to reach far more people. In Kebbi State, one of Nigeria's important agricultural regions, Wang took on an even more ambitious project, managing a rice farm covering over 2,000 hectares, more than triple the size of the original demonstration farm. This expansion required more than just land. Wang helped facilitate the importation of Chinese agricultural equipment, including planting machines, threshing machines, and other mechanized tools that could significantly boost efficiency. These machines represented modern agricultural technology that many Nigerian farmers had never seen before, let alone used. But technology alone doesn't create agricultural transformation. People do. Wang's operation created jobs for more than 20,000 local residents, providing stable employment and income in a region where such opportunities had been, well, pretty scarce. Beyond immediate employment, Wang established comprehensive training programs that educated over 5,000 agricultural technicians and farmers in advanced methods, modern equipment operation, and farm management principles. These training initiatives proved crucial for long-term impact. Rather than creating dependency on Chinese expertise, Wang was building Nigerian capacity, ensuring that when he eventually left, local farmers and technicians could continue improving agricultural productivity on their own. The numbers that tell the story. Nigeria's rice revolution. By 2022, Nigeria's agricultural statistics reflected honestly a historic transformation. The country's average rice yield per unit of land had reached 500 kilograms, a figure that, would have seemed impossible during Wang's difficult early years. In some experimental fields using optimal techniques, yields hit 1,000 kilograms per unit area. Looking at the bigger picture, the cumulative impact of Wang's 2 decades of work is, well, staggering. His various projects have produced more than 3 million tons of rice across Africa. An estimated 300,000 Nigerian people have been lifted out of hunger as a direct result of this agricultural transformation. These achievements didn't go unnoticed by the communities Wang served. In a gesture that speaks volumes about his impact, local villagers conferred upon Wang Xuemin the title of Honorary Chief, a traditional honor rarely given to outsiders. This recognition transcends mere gratitude. It represents acceptance into the community's social structure and acknowledgement of profound contributions to the people's welfare. Beyond Nigeria, China's rice technology across Africa. Wang Xuemin's success in Nigeria opened doors across the continent. Chinese rice cultivation technology has now been adopted in more than 20 African nations, including some of the world's poorest countries, Burundi, Mozambique, Kenya, and Angola among them. Chinese agricultural experts are working in these diverse environments, adapting proven techniques to local conditions while respecting regional differences in climate, soil, and farming culture. The core approach remains consistent, introducing higher yield varieties, teaching sustainable farming methods, and building local capacity through training and technology transfer. This expansion demonstrates that Wang's work wasn't an isolated success story, but rather a replicable model for agricultural development. The techniques proven in Nigerian fields can be modified and applied across different African contexts, multiplying the impact many times over. The philosophy behind the seeds, China's development approach. Wang Xuemin's story reflects a broader philosophy guiding Chinese engagement in developing nations, particularly along the Belt and Road Initiative. Rather than viewing international development as charity or purely extractive economic opportunity, China has promoted a vision of mutual development where assistance builds capacity rather than creating dependency. In agriculture specifically, this means providing not just food aid during crises, but the infrastructure, inputs, technology, and knowledge that enable countries to feed themselves. The Nigeria Agricultural Technology Demonstration Center and Wang's farming operations exemplify this approach. Their investments in sustainable food security rather than temporary solutions. This model differs from some historical approaches to international development, where donor countries provided resources but retained control over technology and expertise. By training thousands of Nigerian farmers and technicians, Wang ensured that the knowledge and capabilities would remain in Nigeria long after he departed. The human element. What motivated 2 decades in Nigeria? Understanding Wang Xuemin's achievement, really requires looking beyond agricultural statistics to the human dimension of his choice. Spending 20 years in a challenging environment, far from family and familiar comforts, that demands extraordinary dedication. So, what drives someone to make such sacrifices? While we can't fully know Wang's internal motivations, his actions suggest a deep sense of purpose rooted in alleviating human suffering. Every ton of rice represents families eating regular meals. Every trained farmer represents expanded capabilities that will benefit their community for generations. Every improved harvest represents children with better nutrition and brighter futures. Wang could have completed a shorter assignment and returned to China with his reputation intact. Instead, he chose to stay, to persist through failures, to keep refining techniques until they worked. This perseverance speaks to a character and commitment that really transcends national boundaries or career advancement. Challenges that remain, the ongoing work. Despite tremendous progress, Nigeria's agricultural challenges aren't fully solved. Climate change is altering rainfall patterns and temperature extremes, creating new uncertainties for farmers. Population growth continues to increase food demands. Market infrastructure for getting crops from farms to consumers remains underdeveloped in many regions. Wang's contributions have built a strong foundation, but, sustained progress requires continued investment, innovation, and adaptation. The next generation of agricultural experts, increasingly Nigerian rather than foreign, will need to address evolving challenges while building on existing successes. Additionally, as China's agricultural engagement in Africa expands, questions about long-term sustainability and local ownership become increasingly important. The most successful development projects are those that eventually become locally driven and managed. Wang's emphasis on training and capacity building points toward this goal, but the transition from foreign-led to locally-led agricultural innovation must be managed thoughtfully. Lessons for global development. What Wang's story teaches us. Wang Xuemin's journey offers several crucial insights for international development efforts worldwide. First, there are no quick fixes in agricultural development. Wang's breakthrough came after years of failure, experimentation, and patient refinement. Development organizations and donor countries often want rapid results, but meaningful change frequently requires decade-long commitments. Second, technology must be adapted to local contexts rather than imposed. Wang didn't simply plant Chinese rice varieties and expect success. He bred new varieties specifically for Nigerian conditions and developed planting techniques that worked within local constraints. Third, capacity building matters more than simple resource transfers. By training thousands of Nigerian farmers and technicians, Wang created sustainable change that will outlast any individual project or foreign expert's tenure. Fourth, cultural respect and community integration enhance development outcomes. Wang's willingness to work alongside local farmers, learn from Nigerian conditions, and ultimately receive recognition as an honorary chief reflects an approach that values local knowledge and builds genuine partnerships. Finally, addressing basic human needs like food security creates ripple effects across society. Better nutrition improves health, educational outcomes, and economic productivity. Wang's rice fields have likely influenced Nigerian development in ways extending far beyond agriculture. The broader China-Africa agricultural partnership. Wang Xuemin's individual achievement exists within a much larger framework of China-Africa agricultural cooperation. Thousands of Chinese agricultural technicians work across the continent on diverse projects, introducing drought-resistant crops, establishing irrigation systems, building grain storage facilities, and creating agricultural training centers. This engagement represents China's largest agricultural technology transfer program since its own domestic agricultural reforms transformed Chinese food production in recent decades. Chinese policymakers understand that Africa's agricultural potential, if properly developed, could help feed not just the continent but contribute to global food security in an era of climate uncertainty. Critics sometimes question China's motivations in Africa, suggesting that agricultural projects primarily serve Chinese interests in securing resources or markets. While economic considerations certainly play a role, Wang's story illustrates that individuals often have more altruistic motivations, and the benefits to African communities are tangible and substantial regardless of broader geopolitical considerations.